Hello and welcome to the fifth and final video on the world of Equestria. In today's episode, I would like to look at the economy of Equestria, figure out how developed it is, and the rough contours of it. Now obviously it's difficult to say exactly how economically developed Equestria is, but one can get a pretty good sense of it from looking at the show. We know for a fact that they're past barter economy. We've seen them use currency to buy goods and services. There might be some haggling over the price at times, but this isn't a barter economy. Furthermore, we know that they are past the subsistence farming stage of economic development. Throughout most of history, and in fact in many countries today, the predominant economic activity is subsistence farming, farming for just you and your family. In Equestria, there seem to be a couple of big mega farms, such as Cherry Jubilee and the Apple family, but by and large, most ponies do not seem to be involved in agriculture, and those that are tend to have big, huge farms that are presumably feeding huge swaths of the population. This then puts them at just pre-industrial revolution, industrial revolution, or post-industrial. We don't see big masses of unemployed ponies, as we'd expect if they were pre-industrial, as one of the factors that led to the Industrial Revolution was the mass unemployment that was brought about due to the end of subsistence farming. So it seems unlikely then that they are just prior to the Industrial Revolution. We don't see very much in the way of industry. We do see a couple factories. We see the leather factory, we see the cherry factory, but we don't see much more than that. We know they can produce complex goods and complex capital goods. What else is Flim & Flam's Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000, if not an advanced capital good? That is the very definition of capital. So they can produce this. We know they have some factories, but there don't seem to be huge industrial towns. Now, to be fair, they may have them, and we've just never seen them. The main six generally don't have a reason to be going to the big industrial centers, so it's possible they exist. Given that they have factories, given that they can produce complex goods and capital goods, it seems more likely that they are in a post-industrial economy. This is reinforced by the fact that in the Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000, we see that Flim & Flam come in with a capital good and attempt to produce more of a product for the same price using capital instead of labor. This suggests that capital is cheaper than labor, which is very, very much post-industrial. It's only in more recent times that labor has become increasingly expensive. So this all would seem to suggest that Equestria is in a post-industrial stage in the service economy. Now what does this mean? Well, this means that there are still some factories and such, but that most people are employed in producing services, and this is what we see in Equestria. We see that most ponies are doing some form of service, that there are more services than goods being produced. Though we also see that more than enough goods are being produced for ponies to be able to live a comfortable lifestyle. This all is very, very modern, and all really suggests not only is that it's a modern economy, but it's a modern service economy, which puts them on par with most of the developed world. So it seems like Equestria is very modern, at least as far as industry goes. Now, industry isn't the only thing that determines how developed and modern an economy is. One of the other key elements is their financial institutions, how easy it is to transfer money and raise money and take out loans and such like that. Now, there's never been an episode that's focused on it. There never will be an episode that focuses on it, and we've never seen it, so we cannot say whether they have things such as stocks and bonds. What we do know, however, is that they definitely have some advanced financial institutions. In particular, we know that they have some form of banks, and that they have credit, and what's more, freely available credit. We know this as Applebloom at one point says, "You touch it, you buy it. We take cash or credit." This suggests that credit is fairly freely available. Once again, it's really only in our modern world that average everyday folks, such as citizens of Ponyville, have been able to get credit and have it be accepted at almost any store. This definitely suggests that they have advanced financial institutions in the form of banks who take in money and give out loans and give lines of credit and the like. It seems then that Equestria's economy is fairly well developed by our modern standards. However, what makes this more difficult is that there are some areas where they are very different from modern economies. In particular, they have what appears to be a commodity currency. A commodity currency is a currency that's based on the value of something. It has an intrinsic value to it. So gold coins could be a commodity currency because the gold has an intrinsic value. That coin is worth however much the gold in it is worth. This was common in the years prior to the Great Depression, but it is totally non-existent in today's world. Nowadays, every country has what's called a fiat currency. It's a currency that has no intrinsic value and that its value is established by the government. The only reason it's used is because people accept it and they say that yes, this is legal tender. Now, we don't know for a fact that Equestria has a commodity currency. It is highly suggested, though. We see throughout the show the ponies using little golden coins to buy things. We never see paper currency, and what's more, in Magical Mystery Cure we actually see a coin that's silver, which is suggesting that these are silver and gold, two of the very common things to be used in commodity currency. It is possible that these are just given out by the government and it's established that this is what they're worth. Given the fact that we haven't seen any bills, though, it does suggest that they use commodity currency. However, we do know for a fact that gems are accepted as currency. There's no way the government is saying, yes, we're issuing these gems. The gems have an intrinsic value. It clearly is a commodity money. Furthermore, if we were to believe the Gameloft game, the bits in that game have pictures of gems on them. This actually suggests that all the coins are relating to the gems, and maybe the coins are stand-in for the gems, so people aren't carrying gems around with them, but are going, okay, 1 bit here is worth 1/100th of a gem, or whatever. So it definitely is suggested that Equestria has a commodity currency, which really sets them apart from most of the modern world. Now, this is not to say this makes them less modern. There is a debate amongst intelligent people as to whether we should go back to a commodity currency. I'm not going to bring up the issues and the pros and cons here because that's not the point of this video, but the fact of the matter is intelligent people disagree as to whether commodity currency or fiat currency is better. So them going for commodity currency does not make them any less modern. Another way in which they're at odds with most of the modern world seems to be the level of government involvement in the economy. Now, I know this is a hornet's nest, and I'm not going to take any sides in the debate, but we get a very, very, very rough sense as to the level of government involvement in the economy of Equestria. We know for a fact that they are not a communist state, that the government is not controlling the entire economy. We see that ponies are able to set prices how they want, and competition is more or less encouraged in the market. So it's clear that they're not a pure communist state. It's also clear that they're not purely capitalistic. It's not a pure free market as we see Mayor Mara grant a monopoly in the Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000. There's some government involvement in the economy. In fact, there's more than a suggestion of this, as it is highly probable, as I've discussed in prior videos, that the government controls the weather factory. Now this makes sense. There are goods that the government should produce. These are goods where the free market will either not produce them or underproduce them. These are goods that perform a valuable service, but that you cannot exclude the benefits to those just who paid for them. Now, taking the example of the military, you can't say, well, you didn't pay for the military, so we're going to allow your house to be bombed, but no one else's. You can't do that. You don't know who that enemy fighter is going to be bombing. You gotta take them all down. So it's a non-exclusive good, and it makes sense then for the government to provide it because the free market will not provide enough of it. Similar thing happens with the weather. Every pony's better off for it, but you can't exclude the benefits. No, you can't go to this meadow because you didn't pay to have it rain. You can't do that. So it makes sense for it to be provided by the government. There is clearly government involvement in the economy, and there are thus clearly government jobs. Rainbow probably works for the government. Fluttershy may work for a charity, but it's also highly likely that she works for some level of government, as I don't think there's a strong market interest in making sure that the animals are taken care of, so that seems like a government job. So there's clearly government involvement in the economy. However, at the same time, we don't see things like a central bank, and we don't see a lot in the way of like welfare. Now, this is largely because the writers will never touch that issue within a 100-foot pole, but we don't see much in the way of unemployment insurance or poverty assistance and the like. Now, this is mostly because everyone seems to have a job, and it's possible that there are ponies that are doing that. It's taken care of by like charity, or maybe it is done by the government, but we don't see any of it. They also don't seem to have a lot in the way of regulations. How ponies can set their prices or how they can produce things. They don't seem to have a lot in that regard. So all these things combined make it seem plausible that the government has a role, but that they actually have less of a role than we see in most modern post-industrial states. Once again, this doesn't make them any more or less advanced. Intelligent people can disagree on this one. There's nothing intrinsically more modern or less modern about not having a lot of government involvement in the economy. So at the end of the day, Equestria has a unique economic system, but they are clearly an advanced, developed economy. So I hope you found this video interesting, and until next time, stay derpy, my friends.